We love a good story, and the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist is a great story. It has all the right parts. A dark, stormy night in Boston, two thieves dressed as cops. Priceless art vanishing into the darkness. A mystery that has lasted for decades. It feels like a movie. It feels like the work of masterminds. We imagine sophisticated criminals in black turtlenecks moving with silent precision, disabling complex alarms, and disappearing with a curated list of treasures for a shadowy collector. But what if that's all wrong? What if we've been telling the wrong story all this time? What if the Gardner thieves weren't masterminds at all? What if they were just common criminals? A couple of local guys who got incredibly, unbelievably lucky. This is the amateur theory. It's not as glamorous, it's not as cinematic, but it might just be the truth. It suggests the greatest art heist in history wasn't a masterpiece of criminal genius, but a clumsy, messy smash-and-grab job that succeeded through sheer dumb luck and the targeting of a very, very soft target. Let's start at the beginning, the entry. The thieves didn't hack a sophisticated security system. They didn't rappel from the roof. They walked up to the side door and rang the doorbell. They were dressed as police officers, a disguise that is effective but hardly original. They told the night guard, a 23-year-old named Rick Abath, that they were responding to a disturbance call. This is basic social engineering. It preys on authority and procedure. Abath broke protocol by letting them in. That was the first piece of luck. A more experienced, more cynical guard might have told them to wait while he called a supervisor to verify. But Abath was young. He let them in. Once inside, the thieves continued their ruse. They asked Abath if anyone else was with him. He said his partner was on his rounds. They told him to get his partner, which he did. When both guards were in the same room, the thieves made their move. They told Abath he looked familiar and that they had a warrant for his arrest. They asked him to step away from the security desk, which had the only panic button connected to police. Abath, again, complied. He didn't question it. He didn't fight. He walked right out from behind, his only line of defense. This wasn't a sophisticated takedown. It was a con, and the guards fell for it completely. The thieves then handcuffed both men and took them down to the basement. They wrapped duct tape around their heads and hands. It was effective, but it was brutal and messy. This is the stuff of 1,000 common robbery. There was no silent, chloroformed cloth. Just crude, effective duct tape. Their success didn't depend on their own brilliance, but on the complete inexperience and compliance of the two young guards. Now we get to the core of the amateur theory. The art they chose to steal. And, more importantly, the art they chose to leave behind. A professional art thief, working for a specific client or for the high-end black market, would have a shopping list. They would know exactly what to take. They would prioritize value, both monetary and cultural. These thieves did not do that. They went to the Dutch room first. This made sense. It housed some of the museum's biggest treasures. They took Vermeer's The Concert, one of only about 34 of his paintings in the world. Priceless. They took Rembrandt's The Storm on the Sea of Galilee, his only known seascape. Also priceless. They took his A Lady and Gentleman in Black. These were the obvious gets. The blockbuster pieces. Any tourist with a guidebook would know these were important. But then things get weird. The way they took them was an act of butchery. They didn't carefully remove the paintings, frames, and all. They took knives and sliced the canvases right out of their frames. Think about that for a moment. This is the equivalent of stealing a priceless antique car by sawing off the doors and roof. It catastrophically damages the art. The edges are ruined. The canvas is stressed. It makes restoration a nightmare, and immediately signals to any potential buyer that the art was stolen in the most violent way possible. No true professional, no one with any respect for the art or its value, would do this. It's a move born of haste, ignorance, and a complete lack of planning. They wanted the canvas, and they didn't care how they got it. It was a smash and grab. And what did they leave behind in that same room? On an easel in plain sight was Titian's The Rape of Europa. It's considered by many to be the most valuable painting in the entire museum. It's a monumental work by a Renaissance master. They walked right past it. An expert would have made that painting their #1 priority. These guys ignored it. This wasn't a calculated choice. It was a mistake. A huge one. It screams that they didn't know what they were looking at. They grabbed the famous Rembrandts and the Vermeer and just missed the most valuable piece in the room. The weirdness continues. They took a tiny Rembrandt self-portrait etching, about the size of a postage stamp. It was valuable, but difficult to move and easy to lose. Then they went for some truly bizarre items. From a table in the Dutch room, they stole an ancient Chinese bronze beaker, a gu, from the Shang dynasty. It was valuable, sure, but why that? Out of everything in that room, a 3,000-year-old Chinese beaker. It feels like an impulse grab. Something shiny that caught their eye. Then there's the Napoleonic eagle finial. They went to the short gallery and wrenched a brass eagle off the top of a Napoleonic flag. The flag itself would have been more valuable. In fact, they tried to take the flag. They spent time unscrewing the wall mount, but apparently couldn't get it free. So they gave up and just took the eagle on top. A mastermind doesn't get foiled by a stubborn screw. An amateur does. They fumbled, they improvised, they settled for a souvenir. This is not the mark of a professional crew. They also took 5 drawings by Degas. Again, valuable, but their method was clumsy. They unscrewed the frames from the wall and smashed the glass to get the drawings out. More unnecessary damage. And in the Blue Room, they passed on works by Manet, a giant of Impressionism, another of the museum's most important holdings. They seem to have no coherent plan. They grabbed the obvious stuff and wandered around picking up oddities that struck their fancy, all while leaving masterpieces hanging on the walls. It doesn't look like a curated theft. It looks like a shopping spree with a broken moral compass and a terrible sense of art history. Let's talk about the time they spent inside. 81 minutes. An hour and 21 minutes. That is an eternity for a heist. Professional crews are all about speed. In and out. Every second you are on the premises is a second you could get caught. The risk increases exponentially with time. So what were these guys doing for 81 minutes? We know they moved around a lot. We know they fumbled with the Napoleonic flag. We know they went to the security director's office, though nothing was taken from there. The long duration suggests they were not a well-oiled machine. It suggests they were disorganized. Perhaps they were arguing about what to take next. Perhaps they were searching for things and couldn't find them. Maybe they were just ambling through the museum, marveling at their own audacity. The guards later reported hearing them chatting and making noise. Professional thieves are silent. They are ghosts. These guys were loud, they were comfortable. That 81 minutes isn't a sign of their control over the situation, it's a sign of their recklessness. They got lucky that no one drove by, that no other alarm was tripped, that the police didn't happen to do a routine check on the building. Their long stay was a massive, unnecessary risk that no professional would ever take. Then there is the evidence they left or didn't leave. They did a decent job of not leaving fingerprints, but they weren't invisible. They left the duct tape rolls, they left the empty frames scattered on the floor. They weren't forensically perfect, and they did one thing that points to their local common criminal roots. They smashed the frames and glass of the Degas drawings on a marble floor, but they did it on top of a desk blotter, presumably to muffle the sound. It's a small, almost clever street-level trick, not the work of an international art thief. And what about the security system? The myth says they expertly defeated a complex system. The reality is much simpler. The Gardner had a motion detection system that was, even for 1990, pretty basic. It recorded movement. The thieves didn't disable it. They just walked around setting it off. They knew the alarms didn't go directly to the police. This was the museum's fatal flaw. The alarms only went to the security desk inside the museum. Once the guards were tied up, the alarms were useless. The thieves were free to roam, but they did one more thing. On their way out, they went to the security office and took the videotapes from the VCRs. They also took the printout from the motion detector system, which showed a record of their movements through the museum. This seems smart. It seems professional. But think about it another way. It also shows they knew they were clumsy. They knew they had stomped all over the place, setting off detectors. A truly professional team, the kind you see in movies, might find a way to loop the video or disable the recording without ever touching the machine. These guys just did the simplest thing possible. They grabbed the evidence and took it with them. It was effective, yes, but it was a brute force solution, not an elegant one. They weren't hackers. They were burglars who remembered to take the security tape. That level of foresight is common in almost any planned robbery. The final and perhaps most compelling piece of evidence for the amateur theory is the aftermath. The art is gone. It has been gone for over 30 years. 13 major works of art valued at $500 million have never surfaced. Not for sale, not for ransom, nothing. Why? If the thieves were professionals working for a specific collector, that collector would have the art. But collectors die, estates get settled, secrets come out. It seems unlikely a secret collection of this magnitude could stay hidden forever. If they were professionals planning to sell on the black market, they failed spectacularly. These pieces are among the most recognizable works of art in the world. The Storm on the Sea of Galilee is an art history textbook staple. Selling, it would be like trying to sell the Mona Lisa. It's too famous, it's unsellable. A professional organization would have known this. They would have had a plan. They would have arranged a buyer before the theft, or they would have used the art for a ransom negotiation. There have been many high-profile art thefts where the goal was ransom, not resale. The Gardner thieves never made a single credible ransom demand. They just. The most likely scenario is that a couple of mid-level mob associates or common thieves got a tip that the Gardner was an easy target. They knew the guards were lax and the alarms were local. They planned a robbery. They pulled it off through a combination of a decent plan and an incredible amount of luck. They walked out of the museum with $500 million worth of canvas. And then they had a problem, a very big problem. They had the goods, but they had no idea what to do next. They had no international connections. They had no eccentric billionaire waiting in a bunker. They had 13 priceless, famous, and utterly toxic assets. They likely tried to find a buyer and quickly realized it was impossible. Every person they showed it to would either be an informant or would recognize the art immediately. They were stuck. So what happened to the art? It's probably not hanging in a secret vault. It's probably hidden somewhere mundane. It might have been rolled up and stuffed in a tube in an attic. It might be hidden behind a wall in a basement in a quiet Boston suburb. It might have been passed from one panicked criminal to another, a hot potato nobody wanted. The people directly involved in the theft may now be dead. The men who knew where the art was hidden might have taken that secret to their graves, perhaps after being arrested for some other unrelated crime. The FBI has chased down numerous leads in the Boston underworld, focusing on figures like Carmelo Merlino, David Turner, and George Reisfelder. These were not sophisticated art connoisseurs. They were tough, local criminals. The kind of guys who would absolutely slice a painting out of a frame. There's also a darker possibility. The thieves, realizing they were in over their heads and fearing the immense federal heat the theft brought down, may have panicked and destroyed the art. It's a horrifying thought, but for a cornered, unsophisticated criminal, destroying the evidence might seem like the only way out. Getting rid of the problem permanently. This would be the ultimate act of amateurism. To pull off the biggest art heist in history, only to burn the loot in a barrel because you can't figure out what to do with it. When you strip away the romance, the Gardner heist looks less like the Thomas Crown affair and more like a Coen Brothers film, a story of bungling criminals who get in way over their heads. The myth of the masterminds persists because it's a better story. It's comforting to think that such a huge loss was the result of a brilliant plan. It gives the crime a sense of grandeur. The alternative is much more depressing. The alternative is that some of the world's greatest cultural treasures were lost because of a couple of clumsy thugs who didn't know a Tahitian from a tablecloth. They were not surgical. They were messy. They were not knowledgeable. They were ignorant. They were not ghosts. They were a couple of guys in fake mustaches who spent 81 minutes fumbling around a museum. They weren't brilliant. They were lucky. They got lucky with the guards. They got lucky with the local only alarm system. They got lucky that no one noticed anything for hours, and then their luck ran out. So they were left holding treasure they couldn't sell, a secret they couldn't share, and a legacy of cultural destruction. The mystery of the Gardner heist isn't, who were these criminal geniuses? The real mystery is, how could these amateurs have possibly pulled this off, and what on earth did they do next? The empty frames still hanging on the walls of the museum are a testament not to a brilliant crime, but to a stupid one. They are monuments to a colossal, lucky, and ultimately tragic act of idiocy. And accepting that simple, ugly truth might be the first step to finally understanding what happened that night, and maybe, just maybe, getting the art back. The focus shouldn't be on the myth of the thieves. It should be on the reality of the loss, and the hope that somewhere in a dusty, forgotten place, the masterpieces are waiting for their clumsy captor's luck to finally run out for good.